Good morning, my name is Martin, and this is a tribe of the fox. Now, there are several different ways to approach paganism or heathenism. Now, the tribe of the fox, for instance, the tribe of the fox is interested in Northwestern spirituality, that means pre Christian. And we also have a strong affinity with animism, which I made a video about, by the way. Now, there are also other ways to approach paganism or heathenism. For instance, Asatru. Asatru means staying faithful to the Azir deities. Now, the Azir, they are the deities who live in a world named Asgard. And then we are talking about the deities like Thor, like Odin and Frigg. And you can read all about the nine worlds and the deities in the Edda poetry. This is my old copy from 1944 and it's almost falling apart after all these years. Now, another way to approach your practice is Vanatru. Now, then you work with the deities called the Vanir, and they live in Vanaheim. Then we are talking about deities like Freya and Freyr. Another way is Rokatru. Then you work with the Jotnar. The Jotnar are sometimes translated as giants, but I think that's a bit of a weird translation because with giants you think about big people, while the Jotnar are basically very strong forces in nature, personified. They're beings. Yeah, very interesting also. This is like a third pantheon. So now we have three pantheons. There's also another way of practicing that's called Turzatru. But Turzatru is basically anti-cosmic. That's a whole different story, and that's not in the scope of this video. So we might talk about this in another video. Okay, because we are going to talk about the Jotnar and Rokkatru. That's what we're going to do. Now, what can this be, these three pantheons? Asir, Vanir, and the Jotnar. Why three? Maybe this has something to do with history. If we look at Europe, or Northern Europe, Northwestern Europe, then you see that in the past there used to be hunter-gatherers here. So they would roam around the place, do their hunting and their gathering. There used to be Neanderthals here who also had that lifestyle. Sometimes it's said that the Jotnar, the giants, that they are the deities of the Stone Age, of those hunter-gatherer people. Then later on in our history, that was already thousands of years before the Common Era, then agricultural people, they came from Anatolia, so what we nowadays call Turkey, that area. They came through the Balkan area to Northern Europe. So they were agricultural people, and they had a more matriarchal society. Then later on, the Indo-Europeans came. So then Indo-Europeans, they are from the Caucasian area. So that's where the Black Sea is. And they are the ancestors of the Germanic people, the Celtic people, the Slavic people, and the Romans, the Greeks. They were a more patriarchal society in comparison with the agricultural people who used to live here. So it is also said that the Jotnar are the pantheon of the hunter-gatherers. The Vanir are is the pantheon of the agricultural people. And then, or the old Europeans, they are sometimes called. And then the Asir deities, they are the deities of the Indo-European people. So if that's correct, well, it's a model to work with. Maybe it's correct. Makes sense to me. Now, yeah, the tribe of the fox works basically with all three pantheons. However, both Dirkje and me, we have a strong affinity with the Jotnar, both of us. To give you an example, my patron deity is basically Hel, the goddess that rules the realm of the dead. And I made many shamanic journeys to her and her realm, and made lots of videos about how to do that. Now, Dirkje is very much connected with Holle. Now, Holle is also a very, very ancient deity. Might also go back far, far, far beyond Indo-European times. Maybe she belongs also to the Jotnar. Not exactly sure. And the interesting thing is, you need all three pantheons. Because in our opinion, and with our I mean Dirkje and me, I'm not speaking our when I only mean myself, balance is very important. So they're the Asir deities who basically, according to mythology, created the world that we nowadays know. The Jotnar, they are very much, well, a bit uncontrollable, a bit more chaotic, a bit more destructive sometimes. Not always. But you need those two in balance. And then you have the Vanir deities for fertility and prosperity. And all these pantheons, they overlap each other as well. So it's that's pretty complicated, you know. It's not as simple as it's sometimes presented. From yeah, you have the gods and you have the giants, and they fight each other, and it's that's it. Well, no, it's not that simple. There's an overlap, and we need balance. Balance in life and death, balance in order and chaos, balance in day and night, balance in warm and cold, balance in the seasons. That's extremely, extremely important. And what you also see is that these deities are quite well matched. So for instance, I give you an example. Heimdall is a god that's usually classified as an Asir god. However, Mordgoed, she is a deity belonging to the Jotnar, but they basically are two gatekeepers. Mordgoed keeps the gate to Helheim, Heimdall keeps the gate to Asgard, so they're opposites, but they do the same. Same goes for when it comes to healing, for instance, Menglot is a giantess about healing. And Air or Air, can pronounce it several ways, I guess. They are basically both deities about healing. One a Jotnar, one Asir. Again, do the same. How about Iduna and Gerda? Iduna is the Asir deity, Gerda a Jotnar. They both do something with gardening. Okay? Sword and Tyr, or Tivas, both sword fighting deities. Yeah, they also, so you can compare these deities, and you can read about this in this book, the Jotun book. So this is all about the third pantheon, all about the Jotnar. This is written by Raven Caldera, and I also made a video about this book. I made a review about it. It's very thick. It's very much worthwhile. I really like Raven Caldera's books, by the way. But your regular viewers, you already knew that. Okay, yeah, so Freya and Angerboda. Freya, a Vanir deity. Angerboda, a giantess. Both very fertile. In a different way. But again, opposites. So you see, this has nothing to do with being enemies. Okay, so Rokatru, what does it mean? And who came up with this terminology? Well, there was this lady from, I think, New Zealand. She was called Abby Hellasdottir. And she came up with the terminology Rokatru. Now, here's her website. And it's pretty interesting website. Of course, I don't agree with everything. That's not possible to agree on everything, but it's very interesting. It's slightly esoteric, slightly much personal gnosis. It's very, very interesting nonetheless. I recommend you to have a look at this website if you're interested in this topic. Now, another good source about Rokatru is, of course, Raven Caldera, who I just mentioned. And yeah, here's Raven Caldera's website, by the way. Okay. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean, Rokatru? It means basically, if I look at the website of Abihellasdottir, then you see twilight, shadow, darkness. Now, is that negative? Twilight, shadow, darkness, is that negative? No, not at all, because these things simply exist. It's very important, twilight. Twilight is a very magical thing, a very liminal situation. It's between dark and light. It's not entirely dark, it's not entirely light. Dusk and dawn. The liminal, that in between, is very important. That's when things happen. Yeah. Shadow. Is that a bad thing? We human beings, we all have our shadow side. A shadow side is a side that you don't want to see yourself. Your side that you don't want to see. That you don't want other people to see. But it's very important to recognize our shadow sides. Our wild side, our more brutal side, our more animalistic part. Very important to recognize that. Yeah. Some people try to get rid of their animalistic side entirely. They don't recognize it. Yeah, that will always comes back and bite you in the butt. You see that with clergy, for instance, who live in celibacy. Yeah, how often does that go wrong? Yeah, we all know. Yeah, darkness. Is darkness a bad thing? Light and darkness, they come and go. It comes and goes. It's never forever. Now, what realms do we speak about when we speak about the Jotnar, about the giants? We speak, of course, about Jotunheim. However, there are more places that you can involve in Rokatru practice. And again, Rokatru is not what Dirkin and me practice, but we have a strong affinity with the Jotnar. So, for instance, very important, Jotunheim, that's where they live, the Jotnar. Within Jotunheim there is a place, and you can read about this in the Edda again, there is a place called the Ironwood, a place in Jotunheim. That's the realm of Angerboda. Now, to be quite honest, both Dirkin and me have been shamanic journeying to the Ironwood or Mirkfeeder, and it feels totally different than Jotunheim. Sometimes I think it's a whole different world, or maybe an in-between world, different world. Now, Angerboda is a very important deity. That's basically one of the most important deities in Rokatru. She has so many children. She is quite prolific when it comes to giving birth. These children are extremely important. It's Hela, who rules the realm of the dead. She is a daughter of Angerboda. There's also Helheim, and is ruled by these deities, by these Rokatru deities. I also mentioned Mordgoed, who guards the bridge to Helheim. Yeah, and that's also a bit of a shadow thing, isn't it, Helheim? Because many people are so afraid of death. They are so afraid. But life and death are two sides of the same coin, and death, yeah, it doesn't really exist. Yeah, your body dies. Yes, the other more spiritual parts of you, they go to Helheim. But there is a life in itself. There are so many different beings there, and you are there for a while, and then you get reincarnated again. So it's just another world. So is death real? In my opinion, no. In my opinion, my experience, because I made about 200 journeys to Helheim, shamanic journey. So yeah, hell is also one of the Rokkatru deities. How about Fenris the wolf? Because that's also a child of Angerboda. What does Fenris do? He ends an era. At Ragnarok, the end of an era, of a cycle. Everything we talk about balance here, cycles come and go, they come and go. He has a huge destructive role in ending this era, this cycle. That's also necessary, because you can't go on forever. Cycles come and go. Something has to help a cycle to go. Then we have the Midgard snake, Jörmungandr. Jörmungandr is also one of the Rokkatru deities, also a child of Angerboda. Jörmungandr has very much to do with life force and reincarnation. So is that a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing at all. Reincarnation is also coming and going. Balance, cyclic existence. It's beautiful. Of course, one of the most notorious of all Rokkatru deities, Loki. What does Loki do? It is said that he creates chaos. Yeah, chaos is meant to end order. And then if there's chaos, then order will come back. Because you cannot have order all the time, because then everything becomes static. Think about your life, your own life. Suppose you don't like your job. Then you have to, quit the job and move on. So you destroyed something, you destroyed your job that didn't work, and you move on. That's a very Lokian thing to do. Or you don't like it in this place, you want to move to that place. That's also like destroying your old life and rebuild a new life in a new place. Sometimes you just have to do things like that. That's a very Lokian thing. Loki also serves almost like a jester. If you read the Loka Senna, that's one of the Edda poetry chapters, let's call it like this. He comes into a banquet hall where the gods are feasting, and he just insults all of them. And maybe he was even right. Nowadays we call these people comedians. Comedians are supposed to speak the truth, even if it's insulting. Nowadays unfortunately we have this cancel culture, so comedy is not what it used to be, but originally jesters and comedians, they have this role of holding up the mirror to the forces that be. Loki did the same. So yeah. How about Surtur? He is a deity from Muspelheim, the realm of fire. Surtur and his fire giants, they play a huge role in ending this cycle. And then a new cycle can come again. It's also one of the Rokkatru deities. Yeah. And fire, yeah, You know, compare it like this. Sometimes you have a volcano and everything is covered in ashes, everything is burned, but then fertility comes back again. Nothing is forever. Also, destruction is not forever. Now, a very interesting realm, and I never read about this. I never read about this when I read about Rokkatru, because there's not so many sources about it. Mirkfeeder, that's a realm. It's an in-between realm. It does not belong to the 9 worlds, the classical 9 worlds of Germanic mythology. Mirkfeeder is an in-between world. It's like a realm of the dead, but for a specific type of being that dies, specific type of people who die. And I also made a video about this together with Dirkje. And Mirkfeeder is a pretty nasty place. And it's literally a shadow place. Literally a shadow place. People with darkness on their mind, they go there. People, for instance, who committed suicide can go there. I don't say that all of them go there. Traumatized soldiers might end up there. Other people who have something heavy on their mind. Again, the shadow side. Yeah. People apparently relive their shadow side there. Interesting thing is it a Jotun? So that's Jotun is singular, Jotnar multiple. Is it one of the giants who rules Mirkfeeder? Well, according to my shamanic journeying, I always meet Wodan there. So Wodan is, by the way, later on in history, under the name of Odin, he was always presented as the ruler of the gods. But his beginnings were a bit more humble. So he also played a role in transferring the dead to the afterlife. Now, Mirkfeeder is an afterlife. I have not met Wodan a whole lot of times, but in half the cases it was in Mirkfeeder. It might be his realm. It also has the same colors, by the way, as his, call this, what he wears. Doesn't wear a coat? I don't know the English word. The Dutch word is mantel. Cloak. I think that's the right English word. Same color, dark blue, blackish color. Maybe Mirkfeeder, also a shadow realm, is Wodan's realm. It's interesting because Mirkfeeder fits into Rokatru, while Odin fits into Asatru. Something to think about. So perhaps I work with him under the name Wodan and not the later development Odin. So there might be a big difference between the two. Interesting, that's something just to think about. Yeah. Sometimes experiences don't match what is written. That happens. Okay, so what else have we got? Yeah. So basically Rokatru is working with the 3rd pantheon, the Jotnar. It's about the shadow side, the darker side, the more animalistic side. Interesting stuff. Very important to recognize, and maybe that is what we can learn. You should not always strive to 100% order. Sometimes you need chaos, otherwise order will become like a petrified situation with no more growth. When everything is static and stands still. That's what chaos is for. But on the other hand, you cannot use 100% chaos because then everything is down the drain. Yeah. The dark side, it's important, like I told you before, to recognize your own dark side. That doesn't mean you have to totally indulge in it, but that can be not good for other people, so don't do this. This is not what I'm saying. But definitely do recognize that. It's very important. And like I told you before, some people in the clergy, for instance, don't do that. Yeah. That's where you have big problems. Yeah. And also a very important thing is don't judge yourself too hard. If you recognize your shadow sides and all the things you have in you, then don't judge yourself too hard. Now, a good example of being not judgmental is the deity, Lady Hell. The ruler of the realm of the dead. She accepts everyone. Everyone goes there. Well, some go to Mirkfeeder, but in the end, that's temporary. Just like hell, by the way. But most beings go to hell. With one L. With two L's is Christian. Don't have anything to do with it. But Hela is a very, Hela or Hell is a very accepting deity, because you are going to her realm and you are welcome there. Yeah, and being judgmental is, by the way, also something that makes you very tired, right? And nobody is right 100%. That's why I also read about Rokatru, for instance. I don't practice Rokatru. I do read about it, although I don't agree on everything that I read. I have read about Turzatru. Well, I don't practice that. I don't do that. But nonetheless, I read it and try to understand. So not being judgmental is also a very good thing that we can learn from Rokatru. Yeah, and accept our dark side. Accept some chaos now and then. Yes, I'm talking for 27 minutes now, so let's end this video, my friends. So, if you want to know more, then check out the book review of the Jotun book, and I have more book reviews. It's very worthwhile. And I also made a video about Angerboda, who is basically the chief deity of Rokatru. So, that said, let's end this video. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.